Rosemont. So, in about 3 weeks, I'll be teaching a manuscript preparation class, and I also teach self-publishing 101 with Rosemont as well.
Thank you. Diane?
Hi, I'm Diane O'Connell, and my company is Right to Sell Your Book. I'm a former Random House editor, so worked at Random House back in the day, editing and acquiring manuscripts, and I've been in business for myself since 1993, working with authors. I would say about 50% of my business is self-publishing, working with authors through the self-publishing process. The other 50% end up getting traditional deals. And I also have an imprint called Station Square Media that I use for those authors who have worked with me and want to self-publish. So I work not only on the editing end of it, but helping them through the whole process of production, where I have a whole team behind me of really fantastic cover designers, interior designers, back cover copywriters, copy editors, proofreaders, post-production managers, all of that, so that when we do end up going through self-publishing, they not only get the imprint of Station Square Media, but they get the full force of a publishing group behind them, of people who really know their business. And I work with fiction, memoir, and nonfiction.
Awesome. Robin, you tell us a little something about yourself?
Well, thanks for having me here. So I'm lucky. I've been in the book business for 38 years, and I've written about 20 books published by 3 of the 4 largest publishers in the world, HarperCollins, Random House, and Simon & Schuster. But it all started out with self-publishing. I self-published my first book in 1983, and here it is, one of the first editions. A year later, I sold it to HarperCollins, sold the publishing rights, and I was off and running on a wonderful run I've had for all these years. I started teaching grad school about 20 years ago, and I set up the publishing center at the grad school so that every one of our graduates actually graduates as a published author. So I just wanted to say at the outset that I have nothing against traditional publishing, but all of these years I've been able to keep my little publishing company and keep things going. So it's not an either or kind of thing for me. And I'm living proof it can work. I raised 2 kids and sent them to college, living the writer's life. So I'm grateful for that.
Excellent, thanks. And last but not least, Sean Battle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Battle. I'm coming to you from North New Jersey. I am the author of The Forest of Bricks, Profess, and most recently, Happy Endings Are Earned, all of which self-published, all of which are poetry. I am a poet, spoken word artist, author, and event host for the last 10 years. I founded Evolu Culture Ventures back in 2014. Today is our 7th anniversary. So right after this, I'll be going into our anniversary show, our anniversary open mic here in New Jersey regarding that. And although I got my MFA in poetry at Rutgers Newark, it was through that experience that for me, I ended up going the self-publishing route because I wanted ownership. It's about ownership for me. Ownership of the collection, what goes into it, the cover. I've heard too many stories that ultimately led me down this route. And it's something that I'm definitely proud of, in that I'm putting out work that I'm proud of.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm just gonna sort of fade into the background here. I'm here for tech support and keep everything running. But Brianna, it's all yours. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm basically just going to use the email that I got from Lena because there was some good questions in there and I couldn't really come up with any on my own. So let me see if I can find it. Just bear with me a second. Come on. Of course, now my computer is lagging.
So if it's the ones that Aisha came up with, it's like, what are the advantages of self-publishing over traditional publishing, like that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
my computer is being.
Yeah, I think I have them all here.
yeah.
Print the old-fashioned way.
Yes.
So if you need them, we can jump in.
Okay, if somebody wants to jump in, go for it, because now I can't find it. I just had it, but I can't find it. Oh, here we go.
Okay, well, I can jump in terms of the advantages because I have been published both traditionally. I have 5 books that have been published traditionally and 1 book that I've published self-published. So I know it from both ends and also with the authors I've worked with. So the obviously the advantage of publishing traditionally is you get in bookstores. You get the full force of a publishing company behind you. You get that, it's kind of that gratification, right? And of having that publisher say, yes, this is worthwhile. You get some publicity from them and you don't have to invest too much money of your own in terms of getting that book out there. What I mean by that is the publisher will give you in advance and you do earn royalties. But of course, they also expect you to contribute on your own, whatever you want in terms of the marketing end. So what I found when I published traditionally with publishers that they give you a little bit of marketing help, but not a whole hell of a lot, unless you happen to be, you know, an A-list author. And so you're expected to do a lot there. The advantages with self-publishing is that you have speed. It often takes a couple of years to get a book out. That's once your book is sold to a traditional publisher. That's not even counting the months and sometimes years it may take to find an agent who will get your book to a traditional deal. So it could take years to get your book out there with traditional publishing, whereas with self-publishing, I would say, you know, if you're going to do it the right way, generally you can get taking it from the point where it is the manuscript is complete, right? Starting from copy editing stage onward, between 4 to 6 months, generally speaking. You also have full control, as Sean had mentioned about, you know, with covers and what goes in there. The author has a lot of control. Some of my clients who have been traditionally published have come to me in tears going, I hate this cover. I hate what they're doing. And it's very hard to get the publisher to listen to you. So you do have more control. And, you know, it's interesting. I just think I feel closer to my self-published book in a way than I do to all the other traditionally published books that I've done. It becomes much more of an intrinsic thing that, you know, it's hard to define.
Yeah, Diane touched on a lot, a lot. So when I teach Self-Publishing 101, we literally spend a 2-hour class on the pros and cons of self-publishing and traditional publishing. What we found though is a lot of the pros for self-publishing are also the cons for self-publishing. So ownership, like Sean had mentioned, can be a really good pro if you're good at business. But if all you're good at is writing, maybe self-publishing isn't for you, because you really have to take every aspect of the process and either hire someone to be there with you or to do it with you as well. For example, words are my like art, but if you show me a cover, I can't really tell you if it's good or not. I can tell you if I like it, but I'm not a graphic designer. So I don't have that ability to be able to say, I could make a better cover than a publisher, things like that. So like one of my number one pros is it's yours and you get to make every decision on your book. But one of my major cons is it's yours. So if you see a typo in there, you can't blame anyone, like it all comes down to you. You can't say my publisher didn't market me well enough because you're your publisher. So there's certain things, it sort of depends on who you are, what you want from your manuscript, what you want from your publication, and how much you're willing to put into it. That really makes it either a pro or a con for you. And so when I talk to my authors and they decide which way do I want to go, I have a whole pro and con, like a spreadsheet that I just sort of send them and say, I don't know, what do you think? Because it really is a personal decision about what you're looking for in the end.
That's actually a really good point with the pros are also the cons, because that's very true. Like I've found that since I published Ferris, my first book in 2020, and I've learned so much about the book and the story in that time that I don't think I would have learned if I'd waited to do it traditionally. And I also did my own covers. So that's not always advised. It really depends on your skill set, like you said.
Well, another one of the pros and cons that are both ways too is when you're traditionally publishing, you have a team of people who are there to help for your success of your book, right? But you don't get to pick that team. The traditional publisher says, here's your editor. What if you don't get along with that editor? Sucks to be you, so that's like kind of a problem. If you're self-publishing, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you hire a traditional publisher, happen to know a good one, but you hire an editor, somebody who helps you. But you need to have that good relationship between them, between yourself and them. And you can do that self-publishing. You can advertise or interview a bunch of different cover artists. You can interview a bunch of different designers. You could interview a bunch of different editors and find who you best work with. So that also can help you as well and hinder you.
Yeah, so I'm going to move on to the next question, unless somebody has a specific question in mind.
Actually, I have a little something I'd like to add to what Stacey was saying about interviewing cover designers and whatnot. I think that's great, that, you have the ability to choose all this, but it can be so overwhelming. And really, I think unless you are a real DIY person in terms of being able to coordinate all these different factions that are needed to publish your book, you're best off finding someone who can act as a production manager, who can deal with all the problems. And there will be problems. There are many problems that crop up. And who can be the go-to person between the cover designer, the copy editor, the back cover copy writer, all of that, so that you don't have to make yourself crazy saying, well, is this the best cover designer or not? I mean, a production manager, somebody who really understands the publishing business, will help you with all that. So you're very much involved in the process, but you're not left to your own devices.
Yeah, it really, when it comes down to it, and I hate to be this kind of person that's like, oh, it's about money, but it's because it is to a certain extent. Like, it's what you can afford, what you can reasonably do. And I'm still paying off the money that I spent for publishing Ferris, and I'm coming up on a year later. So make of that what you will. But moving on to the next thing.
Well, so a comment on that though too, because that's one we talk about too. How much money do you think you'll make in one versus the other? Honestly, nobody knows. Not even the agents know. We like to pretend we know, but we honestly have no idea. The only person who knows is the person who's buying your book, and we don't know who they are, and we don't know how many of them there are. So you very well could have gotten your book traditionally published, and you could still be paying back your thing, the thing they give you, advance. Yes, the advance. Yes, you could still be paying that back for all that you know, because it all depends on the market, it depends on the marketing, and it depends on the buyer or the reader, the author. So yeah, so
Yeah,
everybody's guess
it's
is
impossible to know. And
It
that's
really
the
is.
thing.
Yeah.
And that's regardless of what field, what area you go to, whether it's self, traditional, hybrid.
Yes, absolutely.
It's just that self is very, hence the term, self-oriented. So it's your money, not the publisher's money.
Correct. And the money is put out front. So that's a question. If you have $0 to publish the book, traditional publishing might be the better route for you to try that, because it doesn't really cost anything to query now that we're not writing letters and mailing them anymore, right? And mailing out those manuscripts and making photocopies of our 300-page manuscript. So if you have no money to put into it, traditional publishing might be a better, at least attempt. Self-publishing will cost you money up front. There's pretty much no way around that. That's just the way it's going to be.
Well, could I add, now that we're talking about money, the biggest disadvantage that I've encountered over the years with self-publishing was the upfront cost. I showed you this book before. This was my first book that cost me $5,000 to publish.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that was because there were minimum press runs in the old days. That's all gone now because we're doing print on demand. So to keep 20 books in print at $5,000 a pop, your basement is full of cardboard boxes of books. You're not going to get your money back until that's recouped. But that's all gone now because of print on demand. So now what happens, I don't carry, inventory is what kills you in the book business. It kills big publishers too. That's why they take books out of print so quick. So if you could find a way to not carry inventory, you can do really well. I found that I keep getting interested in things where you can't make a lot of money. So two things where you can't get rich: teaching grad school and writing books. So as it turns out, writing is a lot of work for a little bit of money. Storytelling is a lot of money for a little bit of work. So what I've been able to do over the years is I make $1,000 a day for doing an author visit at the schools. The average school buys about $300 worth of books a day. School gets out at 3 o'clock. I'm home in time for dinner, and I made $1,300 a day. You can't beat it. So in the strange alchemy between the spoken word and the written word, the books help you get gigs, and the gigs help your book sales. So I guess what I want to say about this is you can get really messed up in the book business if you think about the financial side. So the very few authors make their living on book sales, okay? The way authors make their living is by speaking engagements. And you can parlay your book into speaking engagements, teaching opportunities. The book it's like a magic door that opens the world. You get on radio interviews, people write about you. So I'm a big fan of this idea of sort of a tripod, teaching, book sales, performing. And I think you can have a good life as a writer, but depending solely on book sales is a hard way to go. Stacey, I see you nodding your head. So when students start out, I try to get them to get their head screwed on straight about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. We actually had some questions in the chat. Heather asked how print on demand is managed. And the short answer is that depends on who your print on demand person is. Not necessarily person, but company. Like, say, for example, you do it through Amazon or Kindle Direct Publishing. They handle it differently than, say, Draft Digital, which is what I use for for my Amazon sales and those sorts of things. I don't publish through KDP myself, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I wish I could give you a more concrete answer, but it really just depends on who you go with, because I also publish through Barnes & Noble Press. And that's where I get the physical books from, is Barnes & Noble Press, because 1, it's cheaper, 2, they don't hold as many royalties, and 3, I just didn't want to be on Amazon personally. And I said I would explain why I didn't publish through KDP. Basically, from what I've seen from various people who have published through KDP, and if anybody's not sure what I mean, it's Kindle Direct Publishing. There's just so much competition on Amazon that it makes it really, really hard to really stand out amongst the crowd. And that's already hard. So Amazon makes that even harder because there's so many. So I personally just decided that I would sell my books on Amazon, but I wouldn't publish on Amazon. And those are 2 key differences. And then Sandy asked if we could comment on alternative publishing options, such as print on demand, like Robin said, audiobooks, and Kindle/online delivery. Well, print on demand, like I said, really depends. Audiobooks, I think, because different servicers have different options. I've been trying to get an audiobook for Fairest for like 10 months, I think. That's this one. And I can't get a narrator. Trying to do it through Draft to Digital, and it's not working out very well. So I'm gonna have to look up some other avenues for that.
Try Kobo.
Yeah, I was also going to say try Audible. Even though I know you don't want to, yeah. I had tried Audible for my Novel Maker's Handbook. And I see everybody's holding up their books. I should have thought to have my book to hold up. I'll have to step off camera and get that. But anyway, I had thought, okay, well, I'll do an audiobook for that. And they do have a lot of different levels in terms of how you arrange payment. With some, it's like a royalty split. With others, you can just pay up front and then you get all the royalties. It's a pretty complicated system, but they do have professional voiceover artists who are actually quite good. I went through the whole audition process, selected somebody, and then as she started to record and sent in the sample, it just wasn't working. And so I put it aside for them. So, but you know, the total cost of that for me, that whole process was zero, because you don't have to pay until you actually get this thing produced. But I would highly recommend going with a professional voiceover artist. And, you know, a lot of these companies have them, and auditioning people because you want them to, if you get a, you know, often, you know, with audiobooks, the reviewing process is as much on the performance as it is on the book. So you might have a great book, but if it's a bad performance, you'll get a bad review. And, you know, you don't want that.
Just to piggyback off of that, because it's funny as you brought that up, because I never thought about doing voiceovers or hiring someone else to do the voiceover work, because I'm a performer myself. So I perform my poems and memorize everything, but that is key. Now that I'm hearing about it, if you can't do it yourself, definitely, or you don't trust your voice, I should say, definitely hire someone that can bring your book to life in a whole nother manner. And then that's something I definitely want to look into, just to go that other route. But also to kind of add on to what was said about, you know, options or how to print on demand, because I was on Amazon myself. I was actually on KDP. And for political reasons, I ended up taking my stuff off there. So now it's to a point where until I'm able to have like thousands of books in inventory, the best bet that I could do is get gigs as a performer and tell people to go to the website, and 2, sell all my books exclusively on the website. I've gone through Lulu. And so what happened was they have an app that's exclusive to Shopify, which is where my website is on, Lulu Express, where you can just post your books up online. So on your own website. So I've gone through them for the past couple of months, and it's definitely been a process. But also with that, I wonder how much genre affects that as well. Because getting gigs as a fiction writer or a nonfiction writer can be, or look different as to say, doing it as a poet. What are the differences there? And what's the demand for them? Because poetry in general, even in a traditional sense, I've seen that it's just been a struggle at times, more so than anyone else. I remember on Twitter a while back, I forget how this information got out, but the number of the advances, I should say, how much one was getting advanced as a poet versus how much people were getting advanced as a fiction writer. I just looked at that and went, considering all the work that's needed for either or, traditional or self-publishing, it doesn't make sense to do the traditional route for me, because you're still doing all of that work. So if you're going to be doing, especially for promo, for advertising, and if I'm doing all this, why not have the say in terms of what the graphic design looks like for the cover, et cetera, et cetera. So, but all that honestly came from genre. It came from the type of writing that you do. I probably would be thinking different if I were fiction, but because it's poetry, which is already like a flimsy market to begin with, it just started to make sense to just have more ownership of the work, flaws and all.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Poetry is tough. People don't buy poetry as much as maybe they should. It's really, really hard to get poetry published. So yeah, you're definitely right. The genre's in there. I understand the political reasons not to be on Amazon. I understand the personal reasons not to be on Amazon. But it really changes your marketing strategy if you're not on Amazon. So kind of depends on where you're warring between your personal beliefs and how much you want to market yourself. Perhaps the reason why we're not seeing as huge sales is because we aren't through KDP. KDP actually does market for you. So if you're not super into marketing yourself, trying to say this nicely, like that you're not shooting yourself in your foot, like don't limit your market if you're having difficulty marketing. Amazon owns everything, and that's part of the reason not to publish with them. But then you're really limiting your market. Same thing with Audible. Audible is owned by Amazon. So if you want your audiobook out there, probably should go through them. There are other options. Draft to Digital is a good one. Lulu's a good one. Kobo is a good one. There are a lot of other things, but Draft to Digital is actually an aggregator, which is totally different than a print on demand. So the aggregator is selling through Amazon anyway. So it kind of, you have to see what your publishing company is doing for you and where they're selling for you, and what you want to do. If your personal beliefs are so strong that you don't want to sell to Amazon customers, great, more power to you, but you're going to have to market more for yourself, selling through your website, like Sean said, and all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to agree very much with Stacey on that matter. The author, the books that we do through Station Square Media. Oh, and by the way, this is my book. This was the first Station Square Media book. And since we're getting on to marketing, we do always recommend, and unless you've got a particular reason not to go with Amazon, and let's face it, there's a lot of reasons that people are angry with Amazon, and especially they like to, they're not always the best players, right? But it's a great way to get sales. And I know, when I get my royalty statements every month, I get the bulk of them through Amazon and the worldwide markets that Amazon has. But we also publish through, we don't leave any stone unturned. So you can publish through Amazon, but we do Draft to Digital as well. We publish through Ingram, so it gets you on the Barnes and Noble site and all the other sites. So, the ideal thing is to have your book published in as many venues as possible. In terms of marketing, that is really, really, really the key to making a success when you're, when you are self-published. And Robin had some really, really good points there about not expecting that the sales of the book are going to make you a lot of money. It's what the book brings you. And especially if you happen to be a nonfiction writer and you have a business and you want to write a book to, to help boost your business, you can charge more money if you're the author of a book. You can use that book as an entree to get one-on-one with companies that you may not have been able to get into before. And so it's a great tool for having you bring in money, but the money is not necessarily in the sales. The other thing with marketing, and I'm sure you've all found this as well, that you really have to do a lot of marketing if you want to sell. Amazon does make it easy to market if you know how to work Amazon, if you know how to pick those correct keywords, if you know how to get those reviews and to stay within Amazon's guidelines, not get on the wrong side of them with reviews. If you know how to have the right copy to in the book description. So this is where a lot of, if you don't know, where pros can really help you with that. And also blurbs, getting editorial reviews. That's another big, big thing. And can I just do a little screen share and show, this is what one of my authors, this is what it kind of takes to do. Is it okay to do a little screen share?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, great. So this is, you had asked a question in these email things about success stories. So this is, Carolyn K. Brancato was one of my great success stories, because we're now in the process of getting right to the post-production stage of her second book, The Night Belongs to the Marquis. So this is something, for instance, that she actually did herself through Canva, which is a great, very easy, very intuitive design program. If you notice here, she's got a lot of blurbs. She went out and she formed these relationships and got these are just one-line blurbs, but they gave her fabulous full reviews that she can use to promote her book, both in the advanced praise section of the book and in Amazon as well. And so often, again, with self-publishing, and Robin and Brianna, I'm sure you found this too, and Sean, all of you have found this too, that it's not necessarily the first book that sells, but it's the second and the third book that sells that first book. So the more books you have, the more contacts you've made, the more you can go back to people who gave you great blurbs and say, hey, I have another book, and all of that. But, if you look at this cover here, which I'm really thrilled with, because it says everything that there is about the book. And this is the, when you're working with a top designer, one of the things you want to keep in mind is, what's the genre? How will your book fit in with other books like it? Because again, like on Amazon and like barnesandnoble.com, all these other sites, you have that people who read this book also read, or people who looked at this book also looked. So you'll see a lot of your competition coming up. And if your book doesn't fit in with those genres, it'll be an outlier, right? So you want to look at what are the conventions of your genre, and use that to help with the design. And this was a tough one, because this was World War II, which is not a fun topic to begin with. It was set in Foix, France, in the Pyrenees, which we got in there. And then also the main character, the main female character, is a woman who goes undercover as a nun to help shepherd out soldiers through the caves in Foix. So we wanted to get that nun thing, because eventually she does take her vows. And of course, there's a whole love interest in there as well. So there's a lot of things to consider with cover, and cover is so, you know, people say, what's the most important thing when self-publishing? It's like, well, everything really. I mean, you've got to have a super story, which means great editing, you know, work with an editor, don't skimp on that. But also great cover design will really help your book stand out and help sell it as well, and help people take you seriously as an author.
Yeah, that's very true, Diane. And I'm happy that you brought up the cover, because that's, I don't want to say it's the most important thing, because my whole entire publishing thesis was about how you like debating whether you can or cannot judge a book by its cover. But it's up there. It's up there in the list of importance.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Heather asked if it's easier to set the price for your book as self-published or traditionally published. And in traditional publishing, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't really have any say over how much the book goes for.
Agree.
Whereas in self-publishing, you decide that, because you decide everything. So, but the important thing is you need to study the trends. So again, I'll use my books as an example. Fairest is $14.99 on my website because it's a fantasy fairy tale retelling. And when I was doing market research to see what the prices were for other fantasy fairy tale retellings, that was the price I generally saw. Meanwhile, Find You There is a contemporary romance, and it's $9.99 on my website. Again, same thing, market research and comparative titles led to those decisions. And Fairest may not look that big because of the way I got it printed, but it's like 240 some pages. And then Find You There is just over 200. So these sorts of things matter, because it really, because you want to make sure that if someone's going to buy your book, they're not getting something they didn't want necessarily.
You're exactly right. Traditional publishers will set your price for you, but they're also not expecting to get that much. When they sell wholesale to the like big bookstores, the bookstores aren't paying that much. They're hoping that you pay that much, and then they skim off the top. So they tend to jack up their prices. So self-publishing, those are good prices for self-publishers. That's pretty much where I recommend my authors price, between $9.99 and $14.99. I had a memoir recently that was like, it came out to be 360 some pages. So we sold that one for a little bit more. It was like $19.99. Also because she was selling through Amazon, and Amazon tells you how much it's going to cost to print the book and how much their royalties are, because they take those first. And then if you want to make more than 60 cents a book, you have to price it in a certain place. So as much as you have more control self-publishing, there are still guidelines you need to follow through. If you're selling on Amazon, you can sell it for free, sort of. There are certain stipulations on if you want to sell it for free as well. And same thing with KDP Select, also has little specific things they say that you have to meet in order to meet your prices. So again, you have more control, but there are still guidelines you have to follow. If you're strictly selling over your website after you have purchased the books by yourself from a print on demand, you can sell it for whatever you want to sell it for. And if you have print on demand books that you're taking to like a gig or something like Sean was saying, then he can sell it for whatever he wants to. But when you're selling online, there still are some guidelines, even with self-publishing.
So we had a question in the chat from Christine. How do you get the books out to reviewers before the launch? Is that all personal outreach? In my experience, I have reached out to friends on Facebook to be my beta readers. Whether that's advisable or not, I don't know. I can't specifically tell you whether that was a good idea or not. But what I will tell you is that beta readers and ARC readers are essential. They're about as essential as the editor.
Absolutely, I agree with you. But if she's asking about reviewers, that's a little different. So you can send out to like magazine book reviewers. You can send your book with a letter saying, please review. Will they do it? Sort of depends. And you can have your beta readers also review for you, but unless they have a name to them, it might not make that much of a difference. But you should be asking your beta readers to leave reviews on Amazon or on your website for you as well.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, also speaking to the reviews, one of the things you want to do is reach out to your local paper, right? That's an easy thing. Anything that you can find.
See it, but I reached out to the Northeast Times and my book got in the Northeast Times.
Oh yeah, I mean, local papers are hungry for content and they love, local girl, local boy, makes good and all of that. So definitely start there and then you can build on it. What you want to do and what I recommend, that's great. Wow, you see that? And that you can use to build on for other reviews as well. So, that's one of the things is to try locally. There are other places where you can pay for reviews. The thing about those is you don't have to post those anywhere. You don't have to use them. Sometimes they can help and sometimes they're useless. So it's hard to say, well, you want to get a review, pay for some of these reviews or not. I would also highly recommend sending to book contests, narrowing it down, looking at the ones that are, really good, that don't cost a lot to enter. And, the same thing, with mine, I had entered the Independent Book Publishers Association, and I won the first prize for the writing and publishing books. I was able to use that to get other reviews, right? So again, it's reaching out and it's, taking sometimes a shot in the dark and just keep trying.
Yeah, just to touch on the newspaper thing. I wasn't going to reach out to the newspaper. My mom basically forced me to, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I'm really happy I did it because there's a different kind of excitement you have when you see this thing that you put so much time and energy and effort and everything into in a newspaper. It's a different kind of feeling, I guess is the best way to put it.
But also reach out to your personal contacts. I mean, I know a lot of people who are in an MFA program. Chances are you've met people who are also publishing. So maybe trade. I'll read yours and review yours if you read mine. And who knows, like that could really open up your readership too, because maybe people who would be following your friend would then follow you. So yeah, reach out to everyone that you can.
But I say too, I end up giving away a lot of books for free. The unit cost of my books are only $2 or $3, so it doesn't cost you much to be generous. I eat really low on the food chain. I've been to about every elementary school in Pennsylvania at this point. So I want to make sure that when every kid comes through third grade, they can go to the library and my book will be in their collection. So the beauty of doing this is if you can place your books in libraries, or I just did a book with someone who did a book about, he's one of the oldest living diabetics in America, called 7 Unexpected Blessings of Living with Diabetes. He gave away his books to all the diabetic camps in the US, so they would have it in their collection. So, if you think about the people you want to reach and you want to inspire and be generous, it'll all come back to you eventually. And I was lucky because my books were, back when there was the whole language movement, my books were required reading for every third grader in the state of Pennsylvania. And that's because I made friends with the librarians. They saw they could use it in the classroom. And I just stumbled into that. So I would ask you to be open to your people that are going to be drawn to what you're doing.
I just wanted to touch on something because Sandy asked a question a couple minutes ago, and I didn't want her to feel like I ignored her. Any recommendations for finding editors and fact checkers when self-publishing? For me, my editor is one of my good friends from Rosemont. She happened to be doing her own freelance editing once she graduated with her MA in publishing. And it kind of just came up in conversation one night. I was like, yeah, I could get you to be my editor for Fairest. And she was like, that would be pretty rad. And that's kind of how it happened. And keep in mind, because even though she's my friend, I still paid her. I'm never going to be the type of person that expects work for free. So I still paid her. I think Fairest was altogether, I want to say like $750 to edit. And Find You There was less because I'd already had it developmentally edited because it was my creative writing thesis. So I think that was like $350, I think, something like that. And I know those numbers seem big, but trust me, that's actually on the cheap end of editing, which we could have a whole other panel on editing. But I hope that answers that question.
Also, I wanted to give she was asking about where to find editors. This, I don't know if you can all see it, this book I highly, highly recommend. It's updated every 2 years. It's called Jeff Herman's Guide to Book Publishers, Editors, and Literary Agents. Who they are, what they want, and how to win them over. So you're getting a lot of things in one. If you want a traditional deal, you'll get a lot of, you can find literary agents in there and publishers, but he has a whole section on independent editors that have been vetted by him. So, if they are in this book, you can trust that they're legit. And most of them have a background in the traditional world of publishing. But that's one way of doing it. And also, going to conferences like this, that's one of the best ways of meeting editors. So, try to find it. You can do an internet search. It's kind of hard, but, try to, in groups, if you belong to a writing group, Facebook group, Twitter writing group, LinkedIn, things like that. But this book is really, filled with, and it's, a lot of editors, and it'll tell you what their background is, what they're looking for, what they work with, what they don't work with, how to contact them and whatnot.
Yeah, so it's good that Diane brought up conferences and things like this, because last week I was actually at the Collingswood Book Festival in Collingswood, New Jersey. And that was a great experience, and I highly recommend it if you're trying to get your name out there and sell your books. Not necessarily just Collingswood, because there's a lot of different events that happen, although granted they are lesser now because of COVID. But this, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, but this was some pictures from that event when I was there, and it was tiring. It was a long day, but 100% worth it. And I sold a couple copies of my books. But I did, trying to think of the right phrasing, just about make even with how much it was to have a space and how much I made. So, yeah, I think that's it.
And I would say too, don't try to do this on your own, because it can be really daunting. And you see right on this panel, there are wonderful people that can help you. And so what I did with the grad students, what I'm doing with first-time authors now is to be a book Sherpa. So you're climbing the mountain, you're climbing it, but it's good to have a Sherpa with you that can help you along the way. So I'm looking at people's faces, you know, everybody's getting really worried. Hey, don't forget, this is a ball of fun. Being in the book business. I mean, this box gets delivered and you bring it in the house, you get a kitchen knife, you cut it open, and inside is your book. It's like a miracle. So anyway, I would just encourage you to find people who you can work with and help bring your book to fruition.
And one final note on that, no matter how you find whomever you're looking for, editors or cover designers or interior designers or whatever, make sure that you ask for a quote or a sample edit or a sample text or a sample format or a sample cover design. Like, these people should be able to provide backup that they have done this before and that they're pretty good and that they match what you're actually expecting. So I almost never work with someone that I have not already given a complimentary sample edit with, because I want to be sure that their manuscript's even like ready for me, for one thing, and also that they're happy with what I do for them. So, and that's for me on editing, but anyone for cover design or interior or marketing even, make sure you ask for samples of their work before you book with them.
Okay, we're coming up on close to the end of this panel, but I want to just open the floor to anybody that has any other questions. I mean, you can send them in the chat if you don't feel comfortable talking, that's fine. Or you can talk, whichever one you want to do. But I'll turn off my mic now so you can talk.
I have some resources that some people might, these are not people who are associated, these are people I follow and get great information from. What's the best way of getting it to them? Can I put this in the chat? So there is Brian Cohen, who is he gives tons of free information, really wonderful. He knows his stuff. He's actually writes the back cover copy for me. His company is Best Page Forward, and the URL is bestpageforward.net. But again, he's got lots of videos, just really, really useful stuff. He has webinars. He has a lot of really high level people come in and give free webinars, which is terrific. Also authormedia.com. They have a lot of great articles and useful information for self-published authors. And my favorite is Novel Marketing Podcast. So you can get that, I guess, wherever you get your podcasts. And they just, again, have a wealth of information. And all these things are free to you. So, you know, use them, whatever they can do, whatever they can give you.
Yeah, and I also wanted to encourage everyone, as we wrap up, if you want to put like your websites or your social medias in the chat, like I'll do mine as an example. So that's my website. And then on Instagram, I'm not on Twitter. I used to be, but it got to be too much to try to do too many accounts at one time. But again, personal preference. But as Robin said, yes, this is scary, but it's also very, very fun to be in charge of everything when it comes to self-publishing. So I wanted to kind of leave on a positive note. But yeah, if there was something that anybody had questions about that they couldn't say while we were here, you can DM me on Instagram, you can email me, or anybody here, not just me. My better email that I check more regularly is this one.
Question. I thought that it was free. I did many moons ago. I published my short stories on Amazon. They didn't charge me anything. They they took, the lion's share. I think I got like $2 a copy. It didn't do well at all. But like, 'cause you were talking about spending all this money on it, on publishing your book, and that was a little confusing to me.
Well,
Biggest expenses when you're self-publishing are generally hiring professionals who will actually help with the publishing experience. So for example, editing, cover design, marketing, things of that sort. And also, if you're printing on demand, you do have to buy books up front, even through Amazon. They will charge you whatever that $2 or $3 that Robin had suggested was. And then you have to purchase, say, 10 copies of that up front, or something to that effect. So it's mostly expenses that way, as well as marketing. As much as we have social media now, and that helps decrease our marketing expenses, there still is expense for marketing, no matter where you go.
yeah, speaking of expenses, the thing is that a lot of places like aggregators, that's the word I was looking for earlier and I couldn't think of it. Thank you, Stacey. Like with Draft Digital, they don't charge you, but you do spend money on the advertising, like Instagram ads, Facebook ads, those sorts of things. Those cost money. Trying to think of other examples, like because I designed my own covers, I didn't have the cover designer problem. But again, not everybody's experience is going to be the same. So, you said that you did it a long time ago on Amazon.
Yeah.
So I would wager that things have changed. Because,
Yeah.
as I said before, I didn't use Amazon myself, but I can't speak to that.
There still is no cost to click publish. You can upload any kind of Word document you want. It's not going to look great. And that's the thing that a lot of self-publishers get themselves mired in, is that they didn't hire an editor. So then there's silly mistakes that then readers say, forget this, I'm not going to read it. Or they didn't hire a cover designer if they aren't adept at it, like I certainly wouldn't be. And then readers just sort of scroll through it and say, oh, that doesn't look great, like stuff like that. So if you're not putting money out, you're probably not going to get much money back. At the same time, you can limit where you spend money. But if you just want to upload a PDF or a Word document and click publish, Amazon doesn't charge you a dime. So that's probably more your case.
Yeah. And they let me pick a cover. They did have like a few covers. They were all like just template stuff.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, like it actually wasn't a bad cover. It was like ocean stream or river.
Mm-hmm.
It really wasn't very bad, Of course,
Did you only digitally publish? Was it only an ebook, or did you publish a print book too?
No, it was only print. And I think that was this distinction. I think I had to pay if I wanted to do it like electronic. I think that was extra money.
That's reversed from the way it is now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Ebooks are free.
Okay.
Ebooks are much easier for places like Amazon to sell, because you get them, you do it cheaper and blah, blah, blah. But we're out of time. So
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, like I said, reach out to anybody here if you have any other questions or anything. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Lena, you want to finish this up? Wherever you are.
Lena's in another room. But thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for the whole panel for sharing all your wisdom with us. I hope you all stick around. The next panel is the Meet the Agents and Publishers. It's in the Track 1 channel. And then that'll be the last session of the day. And I guess there's reading during happy hour after that, but it'll be the last panel of the day. So hope you all stick around for that. I hope you had a wonderful day and you continue to. Thanks for coming to Push to Publish.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Bye. Take care.